A lot of black Democrats are leaving the Democratic Party in support for Donald Trump. Are black people allowed to be conservatives? I'm your host, TJ Evans, and this is the TJ Evans Show. When black liberals see black conservatives, do y'all just envision this guy? Because that's not what black conservatives look like. I really don't know what's his whole deal. But I kind of feel that a lot of people, from looking at my social media, I feel like a lot of people believe that black conservatives are just buck dancing Uncle Toms, which is not true. This one video kind of threw me off when I saw it come down my timeline, and it was a little confusing at first.
Black Lives Matter is such a joke. What black people need to do is stop focused on this fantasy oppression and deal with the real issues that are affecting the black community.
True.
Well, the movement is focused on the systemic racism. Here we go with this systemic racism. There's no such thing. Systemic racism is not real. Slavery is over. Okay, so what do you think black people should be focused on? If you really cared about black lives, then you'd be protesting Planned Parenthood and not the police. They're the real killers of black lives.
True.
They placed abortion clinics in the black communities to kill us, and they've been doing it for years. Wait, so you mean to tell me that Planned Parenthood was designed to oppress black people? Yes, finally somebody gets it. We should call that something. Systemic racism. No, it's not the same thing. What are you talking about? It's exactly the same thing. No, it's not. You're brainwashed. I'm a free thinker. Trump 2020. Where you going?
Well, a couple of things. It's biased off top because the black conservative has the title black conservative, and I'm guessing this is a liberal, has the title logical person. But this logical person failed to realize that there is no systematic racism. What oppression, what oppression are black people suffering since in this country we were able to have a black president? We have many of black politicians in office right now. We have plenty of black people holding public office, lawyers, doctors. We have more black billionaires in this country than anywhere on earth, not to mention millionaires. So where is the oppression that black people are suffering? And then, what was it? The systematic racism that he said was Planned Parenthood. Okay, let's think about that then. Since you admitted that Planned Parenthood is killing more black people than anybody else, which is true. Like, Planned Parenthood is the number one killer of African Americans, hands down. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who put the first Planned Parenthood buildings in black communities, she was a socialist. Yeah, she wasn't conservative. So that systematic racism that you're talking about is from the left. It's pretty much like, even when you bring up institutional racism, it's kind of hard to say institutional racism, especially when you want to say that it's from the Republican side, because the institutions are ran by Democrats. And majority of the black people vote Democrat. And they know this. That's why you have people like Joe Biden getting on television in multiple interviews, having his feeling toward the black community expressed so vividly, because he has enough time in his basement to really understand the black issue and understand how black people think. He doubled down on this feeling in the same day when he got on television and said this.
All know, but most people don't know Unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
There's no diversity in the black community. In the Latino community, yeah, but apparently to black Democrats, to Democratic politicians, there's no diversity. He got a little backlash for this because he wasn't supposed to say that out loud because Democrats like to keep stuff like that on the hush because they need the black vote. But he tried to clear it up in a couple of tweets saying, "Throughout my career, I've witnessed the diversity of thought, background, and sentiment within the African American community. It's this diversity that makes our workplaces, communities, and a country a better place." He doesn't believe none of that. He has great PR because he needs that black vote. If he believed that, then he wouldn't have said that earlier this week. Just like when he was on with Charlemagne the God, and Charlemagne asked him about what he's going to do to get the black vote, the people who don't know whether or not they're going to vote for Trump or Biden, how is he going to get that vote? And he said this.
You can't do that to black media.
I can't do that to white media and black media because my wife has to go on at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community.
And this is how they really think. If Donald Trump would have said that, he would have been deemed the racist. But since the institutions are ran by leftists, they're going to help their politicians. News media, ran by leftists. Sports, entertainment, ran by leftists. Education has been ran by leftists for the last 60 years. That's why the kids nowadays do not understand what really happened in history, because they're doing this whole thing called new history, trying to re-educate people. They're trying to re-educate adults and trying to teach new history to kids. That's why, what was that lady's name? Nicole Hannah Parker, the lady who came out with the 1619 Project. She made up her own view of history, trying to change it. And it seems more leftist than anything else. But I digress. We'll get back to her. Why is it that in the black community, diversity of thought is shunned? If you don't believe that it's shunned, then how come when NBA player Jonathan Isaac decided not to kneel for the national anthem, he was asked stupid questions?
So I have a two-part question for you. So you didn't kneel during the anthem, but you also didn't wear a Black Lives Matter shirt. Do you believe that Black Lives Matter?
Absolutely. I believe that Black Lives Matter. Um, a lot went into my decision, and part of it is, first off, um, is my thought that kneeling or wearing a Black Lives Matter T-shirt don't go hand in hand with supporting Black lives. And so I felt like, just me personally, what it is that I believe in, standing on the stance that I do believe that Black Lives Matter, but I just felt like it was the decision that I had to make, and I didn't feel like putting that shirt on and kneeling went hand in hand with supporting Black lives, or that it made me support Black lives or not. I believe that for myself, my life has been supported through the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that everyone is made in the image of God, and that we all fall short of God's glory, and that each and every one of us, each and every day, do things that we shouldn't do. We say things that we shouldn't say. We hate and we dislike people that we shouldn't hate and dislike. And sometimes it gets into a point where we point fingers about whose evil is worse. And sometimes that comes down to simply whose evil is most visible. So I felt like I wanted to just take a stand on. I feel like we all make mistakes, but I think the gospel of Jesus Christ is that there's grace for us, and that Jesus came and died for our sins, and that if we all will come to an understanding of that and understand that God wants to have a relationship with us, that we can get past skin color, we can get past all the things in our world that are messed up, jacked up. I think when you look around, racism isn't the only thing that plagues our society, that plagues our nation, that plagues our world. And I feel like, coming together on that message that we want to get past not only racism, but everything that plagues us as a society. I feel like the answer to it is the gospel.
And black people weren't insulted by this question. They felt that apparently that it was necessary because they were upset that he didn't kneel. His answer was perfect because Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with black people. It is a political movement. It is a political movement stemmed in Marxism. Marxism, the same Marxism that is trying to destroy the family unit. If you don't know, the family unit is what's necessary for the black community to strive, as in any other community. But people were upset about this, and then later on, he was injured. Like season-ending injury, and memes were put up on it about him saying that it was the ancestors. Why wasn't he able to have a difference in opinion? And this is not the only time it happens. When Terry Crews came out about Black Lives Matter being a terrible movement, which it is, and how it doesn't care about black lives because it didn't say anything about the killings in Chicago or the kids that were killed since this protest began. And he went on with Don Lemon because that's what these news organizations do when they want to get at a black person for not sticking to the narrative. They put on a black anchor. And Don Lemon had this to say.
The Black Lives Matter movement was started because it was talking about police brutality. If you want an all Black Lives Matter movement that talks about gun violence in communities, including, black communities, then start that movement with that name. But that's not what Black Lives Matter is about. It's not an all-encompassing. So if you're talking about, if someone started a movement that said, cancer matters, and then someone comes in and says, why aren't you talking about HIV? It's not the same thing. Black Lives Matter is about police brutality and about criminal justice. It's not about what happens in communities when it comes to crime, black on black crime. People who live near each other, black people, kill each other. Same as whites. 80-some% of white people are killed by white people. True. Because of proximity. Very true. It's the same thing with black people. That happens in every single neighborhood. But that doesn't, again, I'm not saying that's not important that those kids died, but it's a different movement.
But the name of the organization is Black Lives Matter, Don Lemon. When anyone says all lives matter, everyone gets upset. And they say, no, this is about black lives. But apparently, when you say, what about all black lives, it's an upsetting thing. Because you're not sticking to the narrative. Just like the narrative that all black people should not vote for Donald Trump. That all black people have to be Democrat and have to support Democratic policies. Another example. Vernon Jones, a Georgia representative, was on MSNBC with host Craig Melvin, another black guy, because these news organizations, they know how not to get sued, or at least the public pissed off at him. On with another black guy, and Vernon Jones decided, yo, I want to support the president because I care about this country, and I know Joe Biden is a terrible politician. And Craig Melvin pretty much called him a coon.
It's better off under his administration than the previous administration. So, I don't want to get caught into politics.
Well,
just because I'm a Democrat, if my party feels though that
I like to traffic in facts, and much of what you just said is patently false. But I do want to. Representative Jones. This is my show. I'll ask questions Give me a
Well,
second.
you had me on your show,
I
so
know,
let me explain. Don't cut me off when I'm giving an answer.
I'm not cutting you off, but I do want. Are you a paid campaign surrogate? Are you being compensated
Never
by
receive. Let me be clear. You get paid to shape a liberal narrative.
That's what leftist liberals do. They'll call you names instead of challenging your ideas. And the sad thing is, they understand that conservatives have the facts behind them, especially when it comes down to the black vote, either Democrat or Republican. Black people started off as Republicans. That's just the truth of the matter. The first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln, and he did that wild thing and freed the slaves. I know a lot of people like, it was unintentional. Look, either way, freedom happened. I don't care if he did it on purpose or on accident. I'm free. So I'm cool with that. And then conservatives understand the history of the Democratic Party. They understand that the Democrats are the party was the party of slaves. They understand that Democrats were the party of the Ku Klux Klan. They understand that Democrats were the party of the Jim Crow laws. They understand that the Democratic Party was the party of mandatory minimums, of the three-strike law. They understand this. They understand that the Democratic Party allowed welfare to come into the black community and break up the black homes. They understand that the Democratic Party allowed abortion clinics into the black community. 40% of abortions performed each year are black babies. It's sad. And then they understand that their points are weak, because honestly they have no reason not to be Republican other than the fact that they say it's the party of the racists, and that the party switched, even though the parties never switched. What happened was that a couple of Republican representatives, they switched over to, well, a couple of Democratic representatives, they switched to Republican side, but they weren't Dixiecrats. See, in the 1930s, black people voted Republican until the Great Deal happened under Franklin Roosevelt, and that's when, like, they were reluctant, but they ended up going to the Democratic Party under those Dixiecrats who they really didn't like, but they did that because they wanted to get, government assistance, which was terrible, and it ended up voting us down the spiral for years. But when you challenge people like this, they really don't have too much to say about the main issues, and they kind of contradict themselves a lot. They either try to yell you down, call you names, they contradict themselves, or as they explain themselves, they say right a lot. And I noticed that in this interview that I saw from the Fallen State, and the Fallen State is ran by a pastor named Jesse Lee Peterson, and I don't agree with a lot of things that he says because he's a little crazy, but in this interview he had to sit down with a Black Lives activist named David Turner, and I saw a couple of interesting things on this, and I'm going to just comment on a couple clips of it before I get out of here.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is education?
How important is education?
Yes.
Like a 12. It's hella important.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to have two parents in the home?
I think what matters more is, are these parents supported? It's cool to have two parents. I think it's important to have two parents. I think what I'm more concerned about is, do these two parents have the resources and tools that they need in order to raise their children?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to have two parents in the home?
I think it's important for these parents to have the resources and tools that they need.
On what scale, 1 to 10? How important is it to have two parents in the home?
I think, again.
Now, if you notice, it was a little difficult for him to say that a two-parent household and a father is needed in the house. He was quick to say that kids need education. Like, it was no problem. But when he was asked about the family unit, it was kind of difficult for him because as a black man, I know he understands that a family unit is needed. We need black men, strong black men in the household helping and teaching these kids. But since he's with Black Lives Matter, it's kind of hard for him to say that because, again, like I said, they're a Marxist organization. that's trying to destroy the family unit, which in turn will help destroy black people.
So do you believe that Black Lives Matter?
I do.
What does that mean?
Black Lives Matter means that black people and their full humanity, right, their lives should not be harmed or stolen by state-sanctioned violence.
Who does it matter to?
Black lives should matter not only to us, but to everybody.
Not sure, but who does it matter to?
Black lives matter to everyone. And
like who?
Everybody.
Like who, for example?
Everybody who's a contact in your phone, all the people here, whether we're talking about the state, whether we're talking about the government, whether we're talking about the police, whether we're talking about people in our community.
Does Black Lives matter to black people?
Absolutely.
Why are they killing each other?
So to get to that point, I think, right, like when you talk about issues, especially of intra-communal violence, right, people kill who they're next to.
Jesse's a little better than me because I would have said, so you just admitted that Black Lives Matter to everybody, so we can go home because people care. We know that people care. We know everybody cares about Black lives, and everybody can go home. But then Jesse asked, well, why doesn't it matter to other black people? That's a pretty hard question to answer. I'm not even going to get on that. All I'm going to say is Black Lives Matter is a joke, and they understand that it's not just a slogan, that it's a political party. Because if it was just a slogan, a saying, it was something that they could just paint on the streets, it would be over with. Because everybody already understands that Black Lives Matter, period. But this one last thing about the black Democrats and why I couldn't deal with being a Democrat anymore, because at first I did lean left. I still believe that Barack Obama was a terrible president, and no one can tell me 5 things that he did good for the black community. I can actually tell you that Donald Trump has done more for the black community than Barack Obama. The one thing that actually gets under my skin more than anything else is the white liberal. See, a lot of people, they share things that white liberals say on the internet, and every time I hear them speak, I get a little bit frustrated because they think that they're on the side of black people, but honestly, the only thing that they're doing is trying to pacify us. I can't see anything but white people trying to do things to help themselves feel better, because I know a lot of people, they see videos of white people explaining things to other white people about how black people are this and black people are that and how they know the issues. But every time I see it, all I see is it's just cocky white people trying to get clicks. And it gets on my nerves because even though a lot of people see this.
Hey, you march with Black Lives Matter, right?
Yeah.
Well, did you hear about that black police officer who was killed during the looting?
Yeah, I heard about it.
Well, that was a tragic death of a black person, right?
Of course it was.
So why didn't y'all protest?
Protest what?
What do you mean protest what?
Was his killer caught?
Yeah.
Did his killer go to jail?
Yeah.
Is his killer likely to stay in jail for the rest of his life?
I mean, probably.
So justice was served?
I guess so.
So what would we be protesting?
Well, what about black on black crime?
What about it?
Why don't you protest that?
What does somebody killing another person who happens to look like them have to do with systemic inequality, race-based violence, and injustices in the criminal justice system? Exactly. Here, why don't you just take this?
This just says, I'm a racist who seeks to detract from a civil rights movement.
Yeah, I figure if you just show that to people, it'll save you some time.
The only thing that I can see is this.
No is the reason people hate the USA. Herman Cain already died. Good on him. I hope y'all do the same.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed. I also think there's a repression of black voting with how if you're a convicted felon, you're not allowed to vote and everything. And when you look at swing states like Florida, that's a huge population of the like African Americans.
When you're cooning for the white man, does it really feel like you're like actually making any sort of statement?
You said cooning for the white man?
Yes.
Are
Yes,
you
sir.
are you white or black?
I am a white man.
And there are more examples of that than anything else. These people I see as the true racists, and if they're not, I don't think that white people should even be in the conversation about black issues, because they're not black, especially when they're not trying to state facts and they're just trying to go with the movement. Main issue in the black community, to tell all of you out there, it is not violence from the police. Only 9 unarmed people, black people, were killed by the police last year. So that's not the biggest issue. Biggest issue in the black community is fatherless homes, abortion, black on black crime. If we can attack those problems, we'll probably be good. That's all I have for you today. I'm your host, TJ Evans. This is the TJ Evans Show.